Chaos is a weekly theme in college football. One constant, Oregon, undeterred and undefeated. In their first season in the Big Ten, the Ducks ran the table, beating the best the conference had to offer. Oregon is the only undefeated team in FBS this season, a perfect 12-0. OH? Oh no. Ohio State was primed to play Oregon in the Big Ten championship, but the Buckeyes got upset by Michigan. The beneficiary? Penn State. The Nittany Lions belong on the big stage, yet the question remains, can they win the big game? Under head coach James Franklin, Penn State has lost 11 straight games against top 5 opponents, now facing the tippy-top team in all of college football. Penn State, Oregon for the Big Ten Championship on CBS.
And let's go to each campus for some insight on both sides. Tyler Donohue covering State College for 24/7 Sports. Erik Skopil out in Eugene covering the Ducks. Want to ask you guys about something our sports line experts have kind of been kicking around, that the loser of this game is still going to be in a great spot, and you could argue in an even better spot playing, number 12 potentially. It could be a Big 12 champion in the first round, and then maybe Boise in the second round. Are you guys buying that? Tyler, you can start us off.
Yeah, we floated that idea to a few players this week, and they shut us up pretty fast. They want to win the Big Ten championship. They want the bye week. They want a chance to heal up a little bit here in December before they come out in a neutral field, and they'd be 3 wins away from a national title. And oh, by the way, here at Happy Valley, they put the year of your team and they etch it up on the stadium if you win a Big Ten title. It's been a while since that happened, and this 2024 team has plenty of motivation.
Erik, what's the feeling from Oregon?
Yeah, I think it's the same. I mean, the other part of that is it's unpredictable to determine what the draws are at this point, right? Like, we don't know exactly what's going to happen in these conference championship games, and so to suggest you're going to game the system and maybe avoid playing, some of the marquee teams, maybe that doesn't happen, right? Like, it's hard to project that. So I also think the Ducks feel the same as the Nittany Lions. They want a Big Ten championship. I think that would be quite the statement for Oregon, not only to win the conference, but to take down the 3 biggest brands in 1 year with Ohio State, Michigan, and then Penn State. I don't know if there have been many times in Big Ten history where that's happened.
We heard Hakeem Dermish voicing the package that ran into this thing, and he mentioned it on there, Penn State and James Franklin, and the need to win a really big game. Now, he's won a Big Ten championship before, but hasn't been to the college football playoff, and he's got that label that he can't win the big game. So, Tyler, can he start to put an end to that narrative with a win over Oregon?
Of course. It feels like it could launch his brand and Penn State's brand into a different level. I mean, he's in year 11 right now in Happy Valley, and he won that 2016 Big Ten championship, and kind of by surprise. They started that season 2-2. They finished the regular season 10-2, beat Ohio State on a late blocked field goal. And unfortunately for them, the one year they did get to the Big Ten title game out of that East Division and win the conference championship, they had those 2 regular season losses. It was a 14 playoff. So they went out to the Rose Bowl as a consolation prize. And so now, I mean, this would, you got a safety net underneath you. Probably plan B is hosting a game in Beaver Stadium in a couple weekends. But to go into this tournament, depending on what happens in the SEC game, you could be the number 1 seed in this first expanded playoff, and that would be a huge step forward for James Franklin. And, I mean, look, let's face it, it's the first time Penn State's won 11 games since 2008. It's the first time they've done that under James Franklin. He pocketed 10 wins a few different times, but to a lot of fans out there, it feels a little hollow because those 11 wins don't include that victory over the Buckeyes. They stalled out near the goal line in Beaver Stadium, lost by 7 points. And so that hangs large. You can avenge that with a win over the top-ranked team in America.
And, Erik, you see the number at the bottom of the screen there. Oregon to Indianapolis, over 2,000 miles. What's the sense among that fan base that is looking ahead at the schedule and seeing potentially three more neutral site playoff games after this?
I think most years maybe it'd be a little bit concerned about fan turnout. I think the way this team has been received, the 12-0, the way they've played in these big games, I just think there's so much optimism, right? Like the betting favorite to win the whole thing. They've been challenged at times this year, but they've always had the answer. And I get a sense that they're going to show up pretty good in this conference championship game. We've already seen them travel really well to the Midwest this year. I know this will be like the 4th trip out there, but games at Michigan, games at Wisconsin, games at Purdue, I thought you saw a really good turnout, and I expect the same thing here. Obviously, a huge game on the line. It means a lot to this program, and this fan base has been in full support, I think, from day one under Dan Lanning, and the way this season has come out and the way they've performed on the biggest of stages. I think you're going to see them turn out the same way this weekend in Indianapolis, even though it's a kind of a long flight. I know that myself. 4 or 5 hours out there myself. So,
and not cheap either. Let's get into the storylines here, starting with Penn State. They missed a couple of key players in the last game of the regular season. That is a key storyline to watch here. So how healthy are Harrison Wallace, wide receiver, and Elliott Washington, cornerback, Tyler?
Yeah, we got our weekly look at Nittany Lions practice Wednesday evening, and both of them were involved. That was a good step forward. Elliott Washington ended up tweaking something, is how James Franklin described it. Last week, leading up to the Maryland matchup, he was questionable in pregame, did not ultimately play. He's their leading receiver among receivers. Tyler Warren, their tight end, is the go-to guy in the pass game, but he's got double the amount of any receptions of anyone else in that position room. So his absence would be pretty jarring. And then when you look at the other spot, Elliott Washington, this is a little bit more long-term of a situation. He had played in 25-plus snaps at cornerback in 8 straight matchups, was really an ascending figure in that secondary as a sophomore, but he exited early, mid-November game against Purdue. He missed the last 2 regular season matchups, and fortunately, Penn State has Aldavian Collins, who transferred in from Mississippi State last year. He has stepped up, came through with an interception last week, and he's done a pretty good job at helping solidify the depth at that spot on the perimeter. But without Elliott Washington, they'd be a man down, and they're going up against a really accomplished quarterback who can slice and dice you with this Ducks offense. And so you want all hands on deck. We'll see, but both guys being at practice midweek lends some positivity, and I think Wallace is the bigger one to monitor, though, because you take him off the field for Drew Aller in this offense, you start to wonder where are the plays coming from at receiver.
A key storyline for Oregon is protecting Dillon Gabriel, keeping him upright. And Erik, that is one of your keys to victory for the Oregon Ducks as well. Talk about that and your other 2 keys for Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. Like, this is probably the best pass rush Oregon's played this year, and certainly, if it's not the best totality, it's the best individual player with Abdul Carter. It's just a kind of a guy you don't see very often. Not necessarily in the Big Ten, but just in the country at 6'3", 255. The I guess explosiveness, the aggressiveness, the way he plays the game. I think it's really an interesting challenge for Oregon. And its offensive line, which has been remodeled and reshaped this year with some, just the departures a year ago. Joe Moore Award finalists once again. It's going to be interesting to see how Josh Connerly and Johnny Cornelius stack up, not only against him, but also his pass rush mate, Danny Dennis Sutton, for the Nittany Lions. I think it's the biggest challenge they've had this year in terms of protection. And we know with Dillon Gabriel, really good passer. When he has a clean pocket, gets a little bit more iffy when he is pressured. And then I think it's imperative. We saw what happened in the Ohio State-Penn State game with Penn State's inability to score in the red zone. I think they came away with 3 points and 3 red zone drives. I think that's the key here for Oregon's defense. Don't let the Nittany Lions convert those drives into touchdowns. Keep this a game where maybe it's the winner is in the 20s, low 20s, high 20s, somewhere in that range. I think you feel pretty good about what your offense can do. But if you allow Penn State to do what it wasn't able to, I guess, against the Buckeyes, I think that causes problems. And then the final one here is just Tyler Warren. What's the answer? Do you bracket him? How do you cover him? Not many teams in the country this year have had an answer. Can Dan Lanning figure out something there? Because that's a game wrecker for the opposing team. And
Tyler, a couple of these keys intersect with Penn State. I know you have Dillon Gabriel on your list. You also have Tyler Warren on your list.
Yeah, Tyler Warren, they got to get him rolling early. A problem for them against Ohio State was they got to halftime. He didn't have a catch yet. That's really strange, and a big part of that was Ohio State's defensive strategy. They keyed on him. Penn State really lacks the alpha perimeter presences in this offense to account for that if they've got a plan on Warren. So Andy Kotelnicki, the offensive coordinator, this has clearly been his favorite weapon. It's worked out well for everyone. Warren has already set the Big Ten record for catches by a tight end in a season, 81. He'll go over 1,000 yards with his next catch, I believe. And so can Andy Kotelnicki design some things where Penn State gets to halftime and it's on Dan Lanning and company to respond versus getting to halftime and trying to find a way to get Tyler Warren going into the third quarter, because that could be a really messy recipe, and it probably means they haven't been doing so well on offense. And Elsewhere on offense, can you get the ground game going? That's been probably the biggest issue offensively for them in some of the marquee matchups against the Michigans, against the Ohio States, is they haven't been able to put games away late with the ground game or really protect their quarterback and establish it early. And look, we talked about Penn State's pass rush. Oregon's got a really strong pass rush too. They got an outstanding duo that's going to be coming off the edge. And so can you counter that with Nick Singleton? He's the ascending presence. He was the 2022 Big Ten Freshman of the Year. Had kind of a sophomore slump last season and started really strong this year before a midseason injury. He's back to as close to 100% as you can be in December, and it's shown up lately in games. So I'm curious if they lean on him a little bit more than usual, try to be that field stretcher and really help Drew Aller get a little bit of comfort level in that pocket and really create some issues for Oregon where do they have to bring pressure from the second or third level, open things up for Tyler Warren down the seam. And I think the really key point defensively is just, on the reverse of that, can you make Dylan Gabriel not comfortable? Can you make sure that he isn't just consistently sitting back there and feeling dialed in and within rhythm with this Ducks offense? Because we've seen it when it's hitting its stride. It doesn't need to be long bombs. They have some deep shots, but it's just him being in control, orchestrating this thing sideline to sideline in space. And so if he's able to do that, and it's got to be more than Abdul Carter, you've got to get in his face and you've got to be able to contain Jordan James in this run game. But ultimately, I think you've got to make Dylan Gabriel, the most experienced man in college football right now, feel like he's on rocky turf as this game progresses.
Great thorough breakdown of the Big Ten championship game. Tyler Donohue from the Penn State side, Erik Skopil from the Oregon side. Our two reporters from 24/7 Sports will be there covering it for us, and we'll have all your coverage leading up to the game, which is on CBS and Paramount Plus Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll have our pregame show on site Saturday morning, beginning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time.